Welcome to the Inner Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm Paul Ryan. And today I want to talk to you about the biggest challenge that arises every time I sit with a group of entrepreneurs, CEOs. And that challenge is freedom. They're all so caught up on the day-to-day activity of the business, the firefighting, the solving this problem, fixing that problem, that they've no time to focus on the things that are really important to them and are really important to the business. And what that really comes down to is just not having the time to think about the business, to take time to plan what's next for the business, where are we going, what do we need to do, what are the challenges we need to overcome, what are the possibilities from us, how can I develop my team. They want time to think about these really important strategic things and they just don't have the time. But they also want time for themselves. They want personal time. They want to have more time with their family, with their partner, with their children, maybe to take more vacations, maybe to work on their wellness so they can work out more, go to the gym, go for a run. They just want the freedom to have more time to do things that can be more powerful and impactful in their business and in their lives. And the single biggest issue tends to be that they simply don't have the time. So obviously, in the very early days of your business, you're just growing that business and you're more worried about getting revenue in, getting sales in. But the people I sit with have already built successful business. They're usually entrepreneurs who own 7 to 8 figure business. So they've already built the business. They've already built those teams, but now they just can't find any freedom to do what they really want to do in the business or outside of the business. I have come across so much information online about how to fix this problem. And it usually comes down to putting proper procedures, systemizing your business. Now, in my experience, systemizing your business, putting processes, putting procedures in is not the problem. And it comes down to this. If you have really poor people in your business and if you have a poor culture in your business, it really doesn't matter what procedures you have in place. They won't make any difference. And if you have really good people in your place, even if you have bad processes and procedures, they will make them better. So when you get to the bottom of it, how does an entrepreneur ultimately find the freedom to live life the way they want to live it, to have the freedom to run their business the way they want it, and have enough time to spend on the things in their lives that are important to them? Well, clearly it comes down to having a really great team in the business. But if you want to have a really great team in the business, you're going to have to put a really good culture in the business. And this becomes a huge challenge. Now, I know this is an enormous challenge for business owners because I went through it. I went through it for so long. I was tied in so many aspects of my business. There always seemed to be a fire to put out, always seemed to be a problem, always seemed to be something that needed my attention, something going wrong, some problem, often an issue between two people in the business, a problem they couldn't resolve, or an issue between two departments. But there was always a challenge that I had to get in, I had to be dragged in to fix. And I was wondering, well, why can't these people step up and fix themselves? So big. And so I began to think, I need to create a culture in this business. I need to create a culture in this business where people naturally step up and fix these problems. Because if people naturally step up and fix these problems, and if they fix them in a way that they don't reoccur, then the business works better and I have more freedom in the business. The problem is when you look up and research about culture, you get a lot of stuff that's nothing to do with culture. So you look up, they'll tell you about perks for your staff and how to treat your staff better. So we did pizzas on a Friday and we put Coke in the fridge and we had baseball hoops outside and we built this beautiful deck so that people could sit outside and have their lunch in the sunshine. We'd staff evenings where we would gather them all together, bowling nights, and we did all these sort of wonderful things. So whatever you can think of that is recommended to improve the culture and the mood in your business and motivate your people, we did all of those things and none of them worked. I mean, sure, when you do these things, the staff like them and you get a quick hit. But ultimately, did it fundamentally change the culture in a business? Did it fundamentally achieve what I was setting out to achieve? And the answer was no, it didn't. So then I brought consultants in to work on my management team, and we went through training programs to try and build a high performance team. We did all of these sort of things. And ultimately, again, very small change, but nothing really worked. And I was really beside myself trying to figure out what am I going to do here. I suppose just like most business owners, I just accepted This is the way business is. I can't fix this. And then one cold Saturday afternoon, sitting in a large conference room in London, a man by the name of Keith Cunningham came on stage. And Keith was an old Texan who spoke common sense about business. And what I really loved about listening to him is he wasn't talking about book sense. He wasn't talking about what he learned from the books. He was talking about what he learned from the field, running small to medium sized businesses. And he said something that really struck me. He said, you have the culture in your business that you tolerate. And he talked about all the things we'd already been doing in the business. As I said, the pizzas on the Friday, all these sort of wonderful things. And he said, they're not culture, they're perks. Everyone confuses perks with culture. They talk about a company that has a good culture, and what they mean is the company has nice perks, but the company might have a lousy culture. If a company has a lousy culture, it's not performing well, and it's not going to be a nice place to work, no matter how great the perks are. So what you really need to do is fix the culture in your company, because when you get to fix the culture in a company, that's when things change. And then he said, the culture is what you tolerate in the business. And most leaders tolerate a poor culture in their business because they simply don't have the courage to call out bad behavior and to set a standard in that business that is non-negotiable. So he was calling out the entrepreneurs, calling out the leaders, saying, you lack courage. If there's a culture problem in your business, it's down to you to call it out and to fix it. I was really struck by this. Now I think about it like raising children. I have 3 adult sons, but I remember when they were kids and they would step at a line. And if we have kids, at some stage they all step at a line. And it's our job as parents to discipline them, to educate them, to show them how to behave properly. So when you have a small child that steps at a line and misbehaves, you need to sit them down. And fundamentally, what you're endeavoring to explain to this child is, in this family, this is how we do things. This is how we behave. This is how we talk to each other. This is what is acceptable. This is what is not acceptable. Fundamentally, that's what you're communicating to your child. And you need to communicate that to a child. Of course, we've all done that. Does that mean your child's behavior changed instantly? So, of course, you're going to have to go back to that child on multiple occasions and go, as I've told you before, this is what is acceptable. This is how we behave. And of course, you have to have consequences for the child. And maybe it's something like no TV or no PlayStation, or they lose their iPhone for a couple of days or something. But you have to have consequences. They have to learn that poor behavior leads to these consequences. But what you won't do is take your child and they behave poorly, walk them down to the local store and buy them an ice cream and give them an ice cream for their poor behavior. Now, you can try that. You can try saying, I need you to behave differently, and here's the reward for behaving differently. But all you're really doing there is reinforcing poor behavior because they begin to learn, when I behave poorly, mom or dad speaks nicely to me and they give me an ice cream. I mean, they're a child and that's what you're teaching to them. And you know the consequence of that. The consequence of that is you get a child that behaves poorly, you get an unruly teenager, and you get an immature and unpleasant adult. So you do your children a disservice by not teaching them how to behave properly and teaching them the consequences of poor behavior. Because if you don't teach them, the world will surely teach them the consequences of poor behavior. But it's the same in the business. And this is the mistake I was doing. And it's the mistake so many people make. I was having poor behavior in the business and I was rewarding it. I was doing these nice things, having these perks, trying to coax people into good behavior, trying to cajole people into good behavior, and it just doesn't work. And once I realized that, the penny finally dropped, and I realized that I had been tolerating poor behavior and I had to change this. Sadly, in my experience, most entrepreneurs, most business owners never get this really crucial message that they are responsible for the culture in their business and they have to change it. And until they accept that responsibility and until they change that culture, they will never have the freedom they desire in their business. If you want that freedom, you're going to have to start with fixing the culture in your business and in your teams. Now, that may sound like I'm being hard. Shouldn't you treat people nicely? Shouldn't you be rewarding them? Of course you should. But you should reward good behavior. You shouldn't reward bad behavior. So if the culture is bad in your business, you have to reward that with consequences, not with perks, not with treats. Think of this. Think of the Navy SEALs. Now, the Navy SEALs are renowned for an incredible culture. They would literally die for each other. Such a band of brothers, such a bond of working together, shoulder to shoulder. Their culture is renowned. But think of how difficult it is to get into the Navy SEALs. You have to be exceptional to even be accepted onto the Navy SEALs training program. And if you get onto the Navy SEALs training program, less than 25% of the people that ever go into the Navy SEALs program would actually get through into the SEALs and get a chance to become a Navy SEALs. So it's really, really difficult to become a Navy SEAL. And when you do become a Navy SEAL, then an incredible high standard is expected of you. And because of that, look at how the Navy SEALs perform. So if you set a really high standard and didn't take people into your business unless they were a really good cultural fit and unless they had the correct skills and aptitude, if it was as difficult to get into your business as it was the Navy SEALs, and if you insisted, did not tolerate anything but that level of commitment and work together, what type of a team you have, what type of a business would you have? And on the flip side to that, if it was as easy to get into the Navy SEALs as it is to get you into your business, if the bar was that low, and if the Navy SEALs tolerated what you tolerate in your business, how effective would the Navy SEALs be? Look, of course, we're not the Navy SEALs, and our businesses do not need to operate at that levels. What if you upped the standard of the people you recruit? And what if you didn't tolerate anything other than the very highest standards in your business? What I fundamentally learned after all of this study and of the years of mistakes I made was that the culture in my business was simply how we treated each other, how we spoke to each other, how we respected each other, how we worked together, and the standards of performance and accountability we accepted. That was very simply it. Going forward, I needed people to treat each other with the greatest of respect and to perform at the highest levels and to accept 100% responsibility for their role in the business and be fully accountable for that. Be fully accountable and responsible for what went right and be fully accountable for what went wrong. And, and the moment I decided that was the new standard in my business, a fundamental change happened within me. And I started engaging with the business and engaging with the team entirely differently. Now, just like the story with the kids and the ice cream. So, if up to now, how you've been engaging with your children is you've been buying them ice cream when they misbehave, now you've a problem you have to fix. And if, just like me, how you'd been engaging with your team and the culture problems in your team is you'd effectively been buying them ice creams, doing all the perks, adding all the nice things to make them behave properly. Well, fundamentally, you're going to have to go back to your children or go back to your team and go, I was wrong. I've been tolerating something I shouldn't have been tolerating, and things have to change. So once I realized things had to change, I gathered my entire crew together, brought them into our office, and I sat down and I said, guys, our culture has to change in the business. And I outlined the culture I wanted in the business. And I said, we are going to only speak to each other with respect. We are going to treat each other with respect. All this bitching, moaning, backbiting, complaining, fighting, that is over. That's not going to be tolerated anymore. Everyone is going to have to speak to everyone else with respect. By the way, like we care for each other, because we work with each other, we spend 40, 50 hours a week with each other. Let's speak to each other like we actually care for each other and we care for the business. And we all need to accept 100% responsibility and be fully accountable for our role in the business, which means we can't blame anyone else. So fundamentally, we began to change how we do things here. But just like it won't change instantly with your kids, I knew it wouldn't change instantly with the business. Because I stood up and I said this, and of course, some people are thinking, well, this is great, I like these changes. And some people are thinking, yeah, right, let's see what happens. And so Don't do that and expect it to change immediately. It becomes an ongoing conversation that probably will take a couple of years, but it becomes an ongoing conversation till you fundamentally shift the awareness and you shift the reality that there's a new standard in here and that's the only standard we're going to accept. But now the hard part. The hard part is once you set the new standard, you have to adhere to the new standard. And what that means is there will be people in your business who, from a behavior point of view, do not want to accept responsibility, do not want to speak to other people with respect. They would much prefer to be criticizing, to be bitching, to be complaining. They would much prefer to be blaming other people for failures in the business. They don't want to accept responsibility. So this is where you have to have zero tolerance. And the zero tolerance is if people don't meet your standards, they have to be removed from the business. This is difficult. This takes time. I've been through it. And literally, the standard has to be applied to everyone in the business from the top to the bottom. So we went through a process of removing people from the business and hiring new people. But once we'd begun to change the culture, as we hired new people, we first looked for people that would be a fit culturally to our business. And then we looked for a very high level of skill. If we didn't have the cultural fit and if we didn't have a high level of aptitude and skill and experience for the role, we simply didn't hire them. And sometimes that meant months and months without filling a position, which is very difficult for a business. But we knew the consequence of taking the wrong people in. And slowly we built an incredible team in the business. At one stage, I removed almost my entire management team from the business. I literally removed 80% of my management team for the business and I brought in a new management. That was difficult, obviously. But once that was done, there was an enormous change in the business, an enormous change in the culture of the business, an enormous change in the performance in the business. And of course, what you've been waiting for, an enormous change in my freedom in the business. Because now I had a team to run day to day, a very high caliber team and a team that were a great cultural fit for me and a great cultural fit for the business. And of course, when you have that, when you set that standard, then that begins to percolate right down through the organization. And you end up with a business that performs very well, and you end up with a business that is culturally very strong. But it comes down to you. It comes down to you realizing that you have to set that standard. You have to have a zero tolerance approach and accept nothing else. Trust me, if you're willing to do that, if you're willing to take that Navy SEAL approach to transforming your culture, then you will have an entirely different business and you will have the business you're hoping to have that will give you the freedom you want. And now we get back to the perks. When you have really good people in your business, you have to look after them really well because they're great people. They can work anywhere. You need to create a great environment for them to work in. You need to treat them with respect. You need to reward them very, very well. You need to pay them very, very well. You need to make them feel like they are part of the business so that they can be rewarded for the work they do. So the perks do come in, but the perks come in to reward good behavior, not to change bad behavior. And once that becomes clear to you and you act on that, you're going to have a major change in your business. Thank you for listening. This is the Inner Entrepreneur Podcast, and I'm Paul Ryan. I really appreciate your time listening. And if you would, could you like, subscribe? It really helps the show. Until next time, take care.